clear pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, things like the consumerization of IT and software as a service and the cloud are really changing the way that businesses deliver applications and information to their end users, to their business partners, and so forth. And the way that the employees work today is also changing, right? With new mobile devices, users can be online and accessing apps and data really from, any device at any time. And work is no longer a place that you go, but it's really an activity that you perform from wherever you happen to be, whether it's on the train or in your office or sitting in the corner of the Starbucks. So, ultimately employees want to be productive, so they, in order to achieve that productivity, they want to have the ability to select their own devices. They want to use smartphones, they want to use tablets and desktops and laptops that they have, both personally owned devices as well as the corporate devices that have been issued. And they want to be able to do that from any location that they're in. So that's really what we call the dynamic workplace, and that's really what it's all about. It's delivering and managing the apps, the data, the tools for the end users, really whenever and wherever they happen to be. But there's a new phenomenon, and we've just, the industry really has coined this phrase in just the last couple of years, and it's something a lot of people refer to as shadow IT. And shadow IT essentially means that your users are bypassing corporate standards and processes and those sorts of things in order to use their own device and their own applications. And that means that if I'm a user and I'm not getting what I need from IT, I'm going to go around IT and get what I want, right? So we've all heard of Dropbox and Box.net and now Box.com and some of the other software as a service features that literally users and departments and business units can take advantage of, oftentimes without IT even knowing it. And of course, that really presents a real risk for IT because IT, for whatever reason, isn't willing to give the employees the flexibility they demand. So in this global business economy, the speed and flexibility with which IT acts are really key success factors. And your smart people in the organization are really your best growth enablers. So what's the new role of IT in this new world, right? So first of all, IT needs to not just adopt this necessary speed and flexibility, but they have to drive it, right? They really have to push this as a process going forward and creating this flexible workplace in order to motivate those smart people and also attract additional folks into the organization. So what's more though, and what's really the biggest challenge for IT is that IT has to strike a balance between empowering the users to do the work that they have to do in the way that they want to do it, but at the same time, IT has to protect the business, right? Meaning you've got to keep IT standards in place, you've got to maintain efficiency, you've got to maintain compliance across the organization, whether that be internal corporate governance, industry standards, or even government regulations, right? So we've really, above and beyond these IT standards and efficiency and compliance, IT needs to do a lot more because we're way beyond the traditional desktop endpoint management world, right? And we recognize that users need to be able to make choices for themselves, and IT needs to be able to enable those users to select whatever platform and device they need to get their job done. So what that really represents today is a major shift from that traditional desktop or endpoint management sort of mindset to this more holistic workplace management state of mind, right? So in order to be effective in the new world, IT has to be equipped to create and provide this dynamic workplace. And that's really where Matrix42 comes in. If you ask the question of, why do we get up in the morning, what drives us and what motivates Matrix42, it's really these three fundamental guiding principles. First of all, we want to give IT the ability to really treat users like customers, right? That same level of customer service and customer satisfaction that you look for in the business and your outside users and the consumers of your business, we want to allow IT to do the same thing with end users so they feel empowered, just as empowered as the customers of the business do. And what that means is that we've got to be able to provide any service to any device at any time based on that user request. But we always have to maintain that level of governance, right? That overarching sense of compliance, right? And making sure that the company is not at risk and that the company's best interests are maintained. So that's where dynamic workplace management comes in. So this is really the big slide in our presentation, because this is ultimately how we deliver the dynamic workplace. So first, we provide, as you can see at the top, a user-friendly and transparent provisioning of any service to any device. If we had to boil down what we do in a nutshell in one breath, that is fundamentally what we're all about. So what do we mean by user-friendly? That really means that we allow the users and empower the users to do their own self-provisioning, meaning they can get access to the tools, to the apps, to the programs, the devices, et cetera, whatever it may be, through a self-service portal, and not having to involve IT. And obviously, that brings about a whole lot of efficiency, as well as the ability for IT to standardize on processes. From the standpoint of transparent provisioning, what that really means is that we give IT, with our tools, a clear and accurate view of all the devices, all the hardware, all the software applications within the business, so that they can make smart financial decisions. And if you'll notice, at the very center of that chart, you can see the end user. And really, the end user for us is the center of the universe. They really drive everything that we do. And, that's the workplace, right, where the user can work from any device, anytime, any location. And if you look to the left, you'll see our solution. We manage physical devices. So this is, what you're accustomed to with the traditional endpoint management. We've been doing that for over 20 years now, managing desktops and laptops and so forth. At the bottom of the slide, there's our second solution area, which is the ability to manage virtual desktops and applications and other enabled virtual devices like iPhones and tablets and so forth. And once a virtual device is created, you can still, you still need to do all the things that you did in the physical workplace, right? You still need to manage software, and you need to manage the OS, settings, user settings, patches, and so forth. And that's what we do for virtual devices. And then on the right side of the slide, you can see we also manage mobile devices, meaning tablets, smartphones, different operating systems, iOS, Android, Windows. The things that, for a lot of IT departments are the scary things that the users are knocking on the door, or the executives are banging on the door and saying, these are the kinds of things that we want to do. And in fact, Matrix42 is, just as a side note, the only company currently out there in the computer management space that offers that single pane of glass, that single console to allow our users to, or our IT customers to manage physical, virtual, and mobile devices all in one place. And then, of course, at the top of the graphic, part of the services we deliver, we allow IT to deliver and manage any IT-built or cloud-based service, which we can push out to the end users via those devices. So when you look at, this for us at Matrix42 is really the platform on which we operate, right? And everything in this platform is supported by a set of solutions. And so for us, there's really 5 fundamental solution pillars that we provide. First, in the upper left-hand side, you'll see user services. That's the self-service portal. That's the service catalog. That's the automated workflows that reduce, IT intervention, increase efficiency and speed of delivery, and obviously eliminate a lot of the errors and issues that happen with manual intervention. As you kind of go counterclockwise around the circle, you've got physical, virtual, and mobile device management, which we'll be covering some of those with Brian's discussion here in just a second. And then ultimately, that overarching, that umbrella under which IT must operate, and that is the compliance umbrella, right? So understanding where assets are and how they're configured, understanding things like software license contracts and software licenses and the associated contracts, and the current state of those licenses and so forth. So fundamentally speaking, these are the things that we do. These are our core competencies. So as we talk about the core competencies, and I'm about to turn it over to Brian, but what we're going to do in the next, let's say, 15, 20 minutes or so is really take you through what we feel are some very pragmatic use cases for how our customers are taking advantage and leveraging the Matrix42 technology. So we're going to look at things like, shopping a virtual desktop and delivering software, uninstalling software via self-service. We'll also look briefly at mobile device management, which is an extremely hot topic for most organizations. And in fact, it's really a greenfield out there because most organizations have absolutely no tools in place to manage the plethora of different devices, the iPhones and iPads and Androids and so forth that are showing up at IT's doorstep. And then we'll show you sort of the view or perspective from the user standpoint of accessing those virtual devices from a mobile device to sort of get a feel for how that looks. And then finally, we'll show how you can handle, let's say, the departure of an employee and the relinquishing of control of a managed mobile device. So without any other delay, what I'm going to do now is, and I guess, do I need to stop sharing here, Q, or do you want to just switch over to Brian? If you can just switch to Brian and make him the presenter, then we'll continue, like I said, with the fun part of the show, right?
Perfect, Daryl. I'll go ahead and just change the role of Brian to the presenter, and he can go ahead and share his desktop there.
Okay. Just a quick check. Can everybody see my desktop?
Yep, we can see it fine. Yep. Looks great.
Thanks, Q. Thanks, Daryl. So just to continue on from Daryl's introduction, Daryl talked, extensively around centering IT around the user and around how the landscape of, IT has changed, how the services have changed, and keeping up with those demands is a new challenge. And what I want to do today is really show you some areas that we help keep up with those challenges. Again, if we center around the user and we talk about user self-service, we're talking about taking the burden off of IT, taking the burden off of help desk, and really putting that back into the user's hands. Again, the user is trying to work from different locations, from different devices, trying to accomplish different things that they have traditionally in the past, and that's the reason why we've adopted definitely a new strategy in the market, and hopefully you'll see the value in that. Instead of doing the day-to-day tasks of the software delivery and those such things that we can continue to do today, but by putting it back on the user, again, alleviating the pressure off of IT and help desk, the one thing that you must do, obviously, to start, though, is to really set your standards, set your IT services, and set your compliance rules. Once those are set, you can then offer these user-based services. So from a high level, what I want to show you guys today is really, Daryl on the last screen really talked about physical device management, virtual device management, mobile device management, as well as migrations. The one use case that we're not going to be able to do today in this environment is around Windows 7 migrations, but we can certainly show you how we could shop for that as well. To start with, what I want to show you here is I've got two different consoles up, and really what these are end user portals, okay? At the very top, you can see here that I have a user called Eva, who is a traditional end user. If I flip over to this browser, I have a Michael logged in, who's an actual admin, or he's set into a role where he has responsibility for approvals. So understand that these services that we talked about that IT can set can be assigned to specific users, can be assigned to groups of users. We can use Active Directory to be able to assign groups of users and what services are allowed. And then Michael could either be an IT administrator or simply a manager of that Active Directory group, let's say manager of marketing, where when Eva would request certain features, he would then get an email saying, one of your employees has requested a feature. Do you wish to approve or deny? So this is what we're going to go through today. Okay, so to start with, what I want to do is I want to start by saying I'm an end user. I'm at my home PC, for example. You know, we are seeing many use cases around bring your own device. In fact, I sat down not too long ago with an executive at a large financial in New York who told me that all new employees who are coming aboard are going to get an $800 allowance for laptops. At that point, the laptop is the employees. They can upgrade that laptop on their own dime. But as far as he's concerned, all the management will be done in the data center through VDI. So let's use that for a use case. I'm an end user. I'm Ava. I'm on my home PC. I log into my portal. I can see here that I already have the Citrix receiver. However, we could push that. So at the bottom of the screen, if you can't see it, let me bring it up a little higher. You can see under my desktops that I do not have a Windows 7 desktop that I have access to. Okay? So I'm going to come into my catalog, which is a list of my services that are provided to me. You can see here that I have things like, let me scroll back up. I have things like 7-Zip, which is a traditional application. I have virtual applications. I also have mobile management, which we're going to get to a little later. I have a virtual desktop, Windows 7 standard via Citrix. I'm going to add this to my shopping cart. It already selects my Active Directory account. If not, you would type in your Active Directory information. I will click Submit and say Checkout. I have the option to review and submit. From here, I can take me through the entire workflow process that Daryl spoke about earlier. You can see here that I have a decision maker whose approval this is pending. So if I come back to Mike, I refresh my page, I now have one open approval for me to review. Again, I can also be notified via email and other things as well. I come in here, I can see that I have a user who's come in here. The recipient is Eva. She has requested this virtual desktop. I can approve that. I can decline it. I can add notes. I can do, and you can see here that I've approved it. I've got no further orders. I can come back to my home page, and you'll see I have no open approvals. If I come back to the Eva's console, this, in the approval process, now says I'm provisioning and acceptance. So before I accept the service from IT, I want to validate that that service worked, right? So again, if we take a step back, we talked about managing a virtual desktop environment. You know, on that last slide that Daryl had around our core competencies, it talked around managing the VDI infrastructure. It talked about expanding the VDI infrastructure, managing master images, you know, managing the desktop pools, allocating the desktop pools, doing XenApp deployment, publishing XenApp applications. So those are the types of things we're doing. On the back end here, what we're saying is that take one of those pools, one of those virtual desktops from the pool and allocate it to this user, again, based on authentication. So not everyone could get a virtual desktop. I'm going to come down to my Citrix receiver, go to my desktops. I need to refresh. Come back, do it again. I now have a Windows 7 standard machine. So again, I'm doing all the automation from an end user service to say, I need a virtual desktop. I need an approval for that desktop. And from within the approval for that desktop, I need to then go to my Citrix infrastructure. Again, Matrix42 is managing that infrastructure. I'm going to allocate resources from the infrastructure to that end user based upon Active Directory. Okay, hopefully that's somewhat clear.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to reinforce that point, though, Brian, because that is very, very important. You know, not only are we taking over at the point where, you know, let's say that the world is perfect and you've got a pool of desktops and everything's just sitting there ready to go and just ready for somebody to pick one off the shelf. Not only do we set it up from that point forward, but even from that point back, you know, we're building the shelves, right? We're putting the virtual desktops out there. So we're actually managing at the low level everything from the hosting infrastructure all the way through the virtual desktops themselves, and then ultimately retirement of those resources when they're no longer needed. So very important to understand that the entire life cycle of that virtual infrastructure and the virtual systems that run on that virtual infrastructure. So
that's a great point, Daryl. That's a great point, Daryl. What we'll do is we'll actually go through that, not only creation but retirement process here in a minute. So we'll be able to see that full life cycle. If I come here, I just want to show you on the desktop that I do not have a particular application. 7-Zip is the free app that we'll use here. So I really want to talk about physical device management now. Physical device management, traditional desktop management is what Daryl was referring to earlier, is around software delivery, inventory, patch management, being able to detect not only the applications through inventory, but what applications are running, how often they're being used, what's the runtime, the last use, so that you can actually do license reclamation and license harvesting, as well as operating system provisioning and migrations, okay? So whether or not this is a physical machine, or in this case a virtual machine, delivering software to that machine is really the same. So this use case could be either physical or virtual, and the end user, Ava, says, okay, I'm at home, I've got my virtual desktop, I have my working environment, however, I'm missing a core application for me to be able to do my job. So I'm going to come back into my catalog and say, this is fantastic that I have my desktop and I'm able to access my work environment from home. However, I need 7-Zip. I want to add that to the cart. I want to say this is the name of my computer. Okay, this is the name of the virtual machine that we're currently on. I want to say submit and check out. Again, so now instead of calling IT, calling the help desk, or going through some service request portal, which is separated from the actual services in my environment, this is, again, an integrated solution which ties everything together. Come to the bottom, I say submit, and I say okay. Now, in a demo environment that we're in today, the agent is checking in regularly, and very shortly we should see the agent pop up with the service. So I'm going to minimize the screen. Let's give it 1 second. Oops. All right. Let's just go ahead and watch the approval process since we have a minute before the agent actually kicks off. As you can see here, all I did, there was no smoke and mirrors there, all I did was click the refresh button on the browser. It just so happened that when I clicked that, the agent popped up. Now, please understand that this agent, the reason I'm showing you this is for demonstration purposes. I didn't want something to show up on the desktop without you knowing what happened. You can see here that installation will begin in 8 seconds. I'm going to let it go. Or I can click this run button and launch it immediately. We should have an icon pick up here after this installation package runs through. And you can see here now we have 7-Zip. Okay. So the use cases that I've run through, again, are the virtual desktop request and the physical management request. So again, so far we've talked about one infrastructure bringing a merging of physical and virtual management together. What I want to do now is talk about that life cycle that Daryl was just alluding to. Okay, so from here, let me just refresh again. It should be at an acceptance phase. What I'm going to do is go into my Win 7-Zip. Okay, so here's my service for 7-Zip. There's a return button. So I can return this service by simply clicking on a button. I'm going to click proceed and submit. From here, the 7-Zip file manager will disappear in a matter of half a minute again. At the same time, while we wait for that, we'll be able to see that disappear down here. But while we do that, let's go back into my services. Let's come down to my virtual desktop. I can see here that I also have the ability to repair a service, back and accept. I have yet to accept my service. So once I click accept, I can put comments in. That service will come into my services. Here comes the uninstall. Instead of waiting 30 seconds, I can click run. It's going to go ahead and run, do an uninstall. Now I've got, again, that's also proving out license reclamation. If I have users that aren't using services, we're able to detect when the last time they've used that. We could send them an email. If you haven't used this service in 30 days, if you don't need it, please return that service. You can also automate the process and remove it for them. But again, talking through end user services. So let me come back here to my services. I have the ability to return this virtual desktop. Again, the full life cycle of VDI. I submit. The uninstall has been placed. I want to go ahead and disconnect. Now, I should be able to. It might take a minute to refresh this. My Windows 7 machine is now gone. Okay, so I've done a full request, then request of application, returning of application, and returning of the virtual desktop, all from an end user service standpoint. Okay, I want to jump now to one more use case, and then we're going to open it up for question and answer. Okay, so from here, I'm going to come to my AVA, and before I jump into the catalog to actually prove this out, give me 1 minute, and I'm going to open this camera. Okay, so this is an iPad, and I just unlocked it. There was no security set. You can see here I have camera and FaceTime and YouTube and all of those types of things. Again, if I come into my settings, you can see here that under General, under Passcode, Pass Lock is turned off here in the corner. Okay, so security is not enabled. I don't have a set list of applications. From my mail perspective, I only have certain mail accounts provisioned to me. That would be Exchange and my Hotmail. So from here, I can say, okay, I only have so many applications. I have all of these services. This device, whether it's bring your own device or company owned, is a security risk if I were to allow corporate email to it. Again, not enforcing any encryption, any compliance policies, any standards, what have you. So from here, I'm going to say this user, again, from a bring your own device perspective, comes into the catalog and says, I do have an iPad. I would like to come in and say, I would like to put my iPad under management. So from here, I'm going to say mobile device enrollment. I'm going to add that to my cart. I'm going to send it, the user an email. Instead of sending it to this account, I'll actually send it to myself. I'm going to say continue. Actually, I need to put a password here. Apologize. Give me 1 second. Okay. You were added to your shopping cart. Let's go ahead and check out. I'm going to come in, say submit. The order was submitted. Again, takes me back to the workflow. Okay. Now, on my actual device, in a minute, I will receive an email. And in fact, it just came through. So let me cut over to that camera. Okay. My device activation. You can see from here, I have 2 links. I have a user name and password link. I also have a token-based authentication. I want to demonstrate both to show you that we have different options. From a token-based authentication, it's not user, it's token-based authentication, so you do not, have to have your user typing in passwords and whatnot, but you certainly can. So from here, the user clicks on that link. They say install. Now again, I have the ability to email that to them. I could post that link for the registration, and they could go to that registration, use their Active Directory username and login information, or I could SMS text them the information. I can say install now as the user. Now you'll see the profiles. Here we go. We're going to say install. And the profile's installed and done. So from here, I'm going to navigate away from this page. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to see changes in my environment. Okay, I'm starting to have things disappear. It's asking me if I can install applications. It's asking me for an exchange password, so you can see here that I'm actually installing mail accounts. So I'm provisioning corporate mail to a user. And I come in here, I've got some restrictions in place. I now have a whole host of applications. And it's asking me for security. So it's going to ask me, when I declined to put a password in right away, but it's going to ask me for security here soon. Now, I didn't have any profiles before this. Now I have an app catalog, Blue Sky Demo Lab, passcode, mail, and removing of YouTube. So again, if we come back, you can see YouTube is gone. Let's go ahead and set my passcode. It said 60 minutes. After 60 minutes, you can hit ignore. After 60 minutes, it will force you to set your passcode. So I've set my passcode to 4 ones. Come back here into my settings. Sorry, we've got the YouTube is gone. Let's come back into mail. You can see here now that I have Exchange Active Sync as a new mail account. So I'm actually provisioning corporate mail after security is enabled to an iPad. Okay, real quick, as the last piece, let me go into my Citrix receiver. The other thing that we provisioned out, let me type in my password. So we've talked about virtual desktop, we've talked about mobile device, we've talked about bring your own device. I now was able to shop for mobile device enrollment, but also able to launch into my delivering a Citrix receiver to that mobile device and actually launching into a virtual desktop from my actual device. So you can see here, I am still on my iPad. I'm able to come in from my iPad. I can click all programs. You can see here I've got pop-ups. So my Windows 7 machine is working through my iPad. In fact, let me try to focus here for you guys. A little bit better. Let me restart later. Okay. So, real quick, before we jump into question and answer, let me go ahead and disconnect from my Citrix environment. Now, as an end user, I have the ability to now come back and say, great. However, this is my own device. Okay? There's corporate wipe and there's enterprise wipe, and then there's device wipe. Device wipe will set this device back to factory standards. And enterprise wipe, which would be used for bring your own device, would say everything on the iPad that came as a part of the iPad outside of the management profiles will remain on that iPad. Their pictures, all of those types of things, music. However, anything that I've provisioned to that end user will be removed as a part of a corporate wipe. So as an end user, I say, okay, that's great, but I'm leaving the company. This is my iPad. Let me come back into my workplace. I want to talk about my hardware. I now have an iPad with my name on it. I want to manage my mobile device. What would I like to do for my mobile device? Again, end user services. We use this a lot in retail as well, where retail use these as customer satisfaction surveys, table seating systems, kitchen management, POS devices. I have a restaurant close to me that uses it as actual tableside ordering. You don't order from a waiter. However, if some user were to go in and screw up that profile, what do? Someone from the restaurant or that retail location could come in here, see the list of their hardware for their devices, and re-enroll or do different things to that device. I actually want to expel device from Matrix42 mobile management, and I want to click submit. I want to proceed. Then I want to bring my camera back up real quick. From here, applications are already disappearing. My YouTube is back. I can jump into my profiles. My profiles are now gone. And if I jump into mail, you can see here that my exchange that I had for the demo environment is now gone as well. So again, I think we've left ourselves a few minutes for question and answer, but really what we want to talk about and drive home today is the ability to provide these services to your end users in an automated fashion to take the burden off of you. And on the back end, what we want to really make sure that you understand is that traditional desktop management, segregated mobile device management, segregated VDI management are really driving into what we hear from our customers when we go in and talk with our customers is around consolidation. They want tool consolidation, they want vendor consolidation, they want automation. What this allows for is a true merger of PC lifecycle management tools, service management tools, mobile device management tools, VDI management tools, all in an open system that allows for other third-party management tools to integrate as well. So, you can further define this, but this is what we provide out of box, is a merger of those things. So, Q, with that, Daryl and myself are available for questions. I'm not exactly sure how much time we have left, but
yeah, we're doing fine on time. We've got a few minutes here, so looks like a few questions have come in. And then also, if anyone has any questions that you've not put through, feel free to put those through on via the chat or the Q&A. The first question is this billing for internal purposes, or are you suggesting external customers?
So
I think that was back earlier in the presentation when you were talking about billing there. Yeah.
Oh, the internal billing, the chargeback capabilities
Yep.
we saw processing. Yeah, that's for internal chargeback, for departmental chargebacks, so that your users, and this is really all about visibility and transparency, right? It's making the user part of the process so that they know, and that the people that are approving these requests understand the impact to the organization, or in this case specifically maybe the impact to their group or to their business unit when services are being ordered. And obviously these things tie back into things like service level agreements and so forth as well. So yeah, this is more or less an internal chargeback for those services requested.
Perfect. Let's see. The next one is, where are the VDI machines being created, in your data set or ours?
Okay, so that's a great question. So this is definitely in your data center. So what we have is, again, it's a Citrix environment that we manage for you. So we do the management of the actual infrastructure, capacity adding to the infrastructure. We manage those pools. We manage the master image. So all the things that are a challenge, that our customers tell us are a challenge, we're able to manage from within our actual management console, not this end user console. Daryl, could you make just a quick comment based around the the Citrix meeting that we had a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been striving for. This is around the certification stuff, Brian, is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we do is we are very tight partners with Citrix. We're part of their Citrix Ready program, and we just recently achieved certification across multiple versions of Zen Server, Zen App, and Zen Desktop. And those are very significant things when you're working with big partners like Citrix. You know, certainly they recognize the value. It was funny, we set a meeting for an hour, and within 15 minutes, the guy said, I've seen enough, you guys are completely certified. So, you know, I think that bodes well for us from a partnership perspective, and we're going to continue to pursue that relationship and continue to enhance things as we go. We have support for the most current, in fact, 5.6 is in desktop, which had just came out in the last week or so.
Perfect. And just as a follow-up to that last question is this a hosted solution or is this an on-premises?
Currently, this is provided as an on-premise solution, although as part of our future direction and as part of what we're working on as a company, we are looking also at a software as a service type of an offering, so an off-premise in the cloud offering as well. So yeah, we are hot on the trail of making that work as well. So, but today this is provided, and we're demonstrating actually an on-premise solution, even though we're running it out of a demo cloud system. Right? So it's sort of a strange parallel there. But
okay, and then looks like we have a few other questions. Is Active Directory required, or can you manage the system without it?
You can manage the system without it. If I didn't make that clear, I apologize. What I was trying to say is that you can create users, you can create groups, you can assign users to that group, or you can leverage what you already have if you have an LDAP directory system in place.
Perfect. And then another one that came across is, does this work with VMware and eDirectory?
Yeah, currently the support that we have for VMware is at the infrastructure, the hosting infrastructure level. So just as Citrix is vendor agnostic for the hosting infrastructure, we do support the provisioning and allocation of VMware ESX, as well as Microsoft Hyper-V, in addition to Zen Server as a hosting infrastructure. Today, we do not manage the VMware View side of things, so essentially the VMware virtual desktops are currently not part of what we supply support for, but only the hosting infrastructure. Yeah.
All right. Then the next question that came through is, what are the server requirements?
So
there you go.
yeah. So the server requirements are going to vary, and that's really around the size of the infrastructure, number of desktops we're managing, number of mobile devices we're managing, number of virtual desktops. Are we talking about all three of those? Are we talking about a subset of physical, virtual, or mobile? So it really depends on the customer. We typically will have a half-day session with our customers talking through what services we're building out for now and in the future, and then through a whiteboard session really net out what that infrastructure will look like. For smaller infrastructures, this can all ride on one server. For very large infrastructures, we may want to separate roles out to different servers, and again, tie them together with the workplace management console, which we're looking at now.
Perfect. Now let's see. Looks like another question came through. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this or not, but it says, has Microsoft changed their licensing model? Microsoft has been insistent that there is not a VDI hosting licensing solution to offer cloud-based offerings of Windows 7 at the last webinar I attended.
Yeah, that is a particularly nasty subject, and it's something that Microsoft has taken a big hit for right now. I don't know if anybody follows Brian Madden, but he wrote a particularly stinging blog entry a couple of weeks ago about that and about really how Microsoft sort of needs to tune that up. I mean, for customers that have service assurance licenses, they're somewhat covered. There's also the virtual desktop licenses that you can buy. The real challenge that you run into is with managed service providers, and clearly today really the only way around, or at least the most straightforward way around the licensing issue, is for individual users, user companies, the companies that are being managed by managed service providers to provide the actual licenses for Windows. But there's still even restrictions with things like virtual desktops and whether those can run on the same hosting infrastructure in a multi-tenancy world. So there is still a lot of questions to be answered. Candidly, I think Microsoft is really not only behind, on coming up with a solution for this, but they are definitely under the gun to figure it out, because there's a lot of unhappy users and customers, and specifically, like I said, these managed service providers and systems integrators who want to provide desktop as a service and those other things that are having real issues with this. So yeah, I would encourage you, like we are as vendors, I would encourage you to continue to pound on the doors at Redmond until they figure out how to make this a palatable. I don't want to take money away from Microsoft. It's well deserved, but there does need to be an equitable way to manage this. Because you think about a virtual desktop, I have a physical PC or laptop that I'm paying the license for, but my virtual desktops, unless it's a full-time desktop that I use 24/7 or it's my only access, most often you'll see things like users that are, developers that need it for a couple of weeks and it goes away, but it still needs to be configured correctly to match the configuration so the test cases run correctly. And so how do you manage that transient nature of licenses that they come and they go and they're not there continuously? So there's a lot of challenges. We do have a white paper that we've written that we can make available to you folks around some of the things in the the licensing challenges, but yeah, it is definitely something that Microsoft needs to be, keenly aware of, on top of, and fix really soon before this stuff really takes off. Because if you look at it, mobile device really drives virtual desktop, and there's those two kind of go hand in hand. And the more mobile devices show up, the more the need there is for companies to provide virtual desktops to allow those users to access their business services. So it's going to be really interesting here in the next 12 to 18 months with Microsoft. But